Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to Reading Thucydides Peloponnesian War. We're using the Crawley translation that's in the landmark Thucydides and the Google Books version so that people can follow us. Today we're starting the 16th year of the war, the spring. We're going to be focusing on the spring, which we will finish up book 5 for the most part, I believe, in that sense. Which starts the thing of what happened is thus the 15th year was kind of a small wee year. There was a minor revolution back in Argos, where Argos originally, because of the war, switched side. The oligarchic faction took over, made a peace treaty and an alliance with Sparta, betraying Athens. The democratic and then the oligarchic imposed once that alliance, they first conquered a region and put a very oligarch government, and then came back to Argos, imposed a even stricter oligarchic regime on it. Uh, this then led to in the 15th year, a rebellion by the democratic forces, killing the oligarchs or exiling what's remaining. And then Sparta kind of came back, and we talked about that. Now, today we're going to be doing the summer of the 16th year of the war. Uh, and it starts on chapter 84, where we get this thing. We get out next, chapter 84 starts as the next summer Alcibiades uh, uh, sailed with 20 ships to Argos and seized the suspected persons still left of the Spartan faction to the number of 300, whom the Athenians forthwith large on the neighboring island of their empire. The Athenians also made a expedition against the island of Melos, with 30 ships of their own, 6 Cillian and 2 Lesbian vessels, 1,600 hoplites, the 300 archers, and 12 mounted archers from Athens, and about 1,500 hoplites from the allies and the islanders. The Milesians were a colony of Sparta that would not submit to the Athenians like other islanders, and first remained neutral and took no part of the struggle, but afterwards, upon the Athenians using violence and plundering their territory, assumed an attitude of open hostility. Clymedes, the son of Limades, Tellius, son of Tisimachus, and generals encompassing the territories with the above armament, before doing any harm to their land, sent envoys to negotiate. The Milesians did not bring before the people, but bade them to state the objections of their mission to the magistrate and the few, upon which the Athenians spoke as follows. Um, since negotiations are not to go on before the people, in order that we may not, in other words, since the negotiations are not to go on before the people, in order that we may not be able to speak straight on without interruption and deceive the ears of the multitude by selective arguments, which would pass without refutation. For we know that this is the meaning of our being brought before the few. What if you who sit there are were going to pursue a method still more cautious still? Make no speech yet yourselves, but take us up wherever you do not like. Settle that before going any further. First, tell us if this proposition suits you. The Milesian, and this is like a dialogue here. Right? This is a dialogue. This seems to be this is the Milesian dialogue, right? And the Milesian commissioner answered, Milesians, to fairness of quietly instructing each other as you propose, there is nothing to object, but your military preparations are too far advanced to agree with what you say. As we see you are come to be judges in your own cases, and that all we can reasonably expect from this negotiation is war, if we prove to have right on our side and refuse to submit, or in the contrary case, slavery. Athenians, if you have met to reason about present presentiments, presentiments for the future, or for anything else other than to consult for your safety of your city upon the fact that you see before you what sorry of your city upon the facts that you see before you, we will cease talking. Otherwise, we will go on. Millions. It is natural and excusable for men in our position to turn more ways than one, both in thought and utterance. However, the question in this conference is, as you say, the safety of our country. And the discussant, if you please, can proceed in the way which you propose. Athenians, for ourselves, we shall not trouble you with the specious pretense, either of how we have a right to our empire because we overthrew the Mede, or are now attacking you because of the wrong you have done us, and make a long speech which would not be believed. And in return, we hope that you, instead of thinking to influence us by saying that you did not join the Spartans alone, although they're colonists, or that although they're colonists, or that you have done us no wrong, will aim at what is feasible, holding in view the real sentiment of us both. Neither since you know as well as we do what right, as the world goes, is only in question between equals in power. While the strong do what they can, the weak suffer what they must. In other words, justice only really happens, doing what is right, and justice can only happen among equals. Among the power, when there's unequality, there can be no justice because the strong do what they want, and the weak suffer what they must. The millions, as we think, at any rate, it is expedient. We speak as we are obliged, since you enjoin us to let right alone and talk only of interest, that you should not destroy what is our common protection, namely, the privilege of being allowed in danger to evoke what is right and fair and right, even to profit by arguments not strictly valid if they can be persuasive. And you are as much interested in this as any, as your fall would be a signal of the heavy as your fall would be a signal for the heaviest vengeance, and for example of the world for the world to mediate upon. The end of our empire, Athenians, the end of our empire, if it should end, does not frighten us. A rival empire like Sparta, or even Sparta, even if Sparta was our real antagonist, is not so terrible to vanquish as subjects who by themselves attack and overpower their rulers. This, however, is a risk that we are content to take. We will now proceed to show you that while we have come here in the interest of our empire, and that we shall say what we are now going to say for the preservation of your country, as we would desire to exercise that empire over you without trouble, and see you preserved for the good of both of us. And how, pray, could we in turn uh, uh, um, turn out as good for us to serve as for you to rule? Uh, um, And this is very interesting. These chapters are very short. You notice this, like almost sentence. Besides, you should have the advantage of submitting before suffering the worst, and we should gain by not destroying you. Million. So you would not. You would not consent to our being neutral, friends instead of enemies, but allies of neither side. No, for your hostility cannot so much hurt us as your friendship will be an argument of our subjects of our weakness, and your enmity of our power. Millions. Is that your subject idea of equity? To put those who have nothing to do with you in the same category with people that are most of them your own colonists and some conquered rebels? Athenians, as far as right goes, they think one has as much of it as the other, and that if any maintains their independence, it is because they are strong. And if we do not molest them, it is because we are afraid. And that besides extending our empire, we should gain in security by your subjection. The fact that you are islanders and weaker than others, rendering it all more important that you should not succeed in thwarting the masters of the sea. But do you not consider that there is no security in the policy which we indicate? For here again, if you debar us from talking about justice and invite us only to obey your interest, we must we also must explain ours and try to persuade you, if the two happen to coincide. How can you avoid making enemies of all the existing neutrals, who shall look at our case and conclude from it that one day or another you will attack them? And what is this but to make greater the enemies than you have already, and to force others to become so who would otherwise have never thought of it? Why? The fact is that mainlanders generally give us but little alarm. The liberty which they enjoy will long prevent their taking precautions against us. Rather, it is islanders like yourselves outside our empire, and subjects smarting under the yoke, who would be most likely to take a rash step and lead themselves and us into the obvious danger. Oh, I should have more water than this. This is at chapter 99. Continues now. Militians. Well, then, if you risk so much to retain your empire and your subjects to get rid of it, um, it were surely great baseness and cowardice in us who are still free not to try everything that can be tried before submitting to your yoke. And if you, Athenians, now, not if you are well advised, the contest not being an equal one, with honor as the prize and shame as the penalty, but a question of self preservation and of not resisting those who are far stronger than you are. Militians, but we know that the fortune of war is sometimes more impartial than the disappropriation of numbers might lead one to suppose. To submit is to give ourselves over to despair, while action still preserves us a hope that we may stand erect. Hope dangers comforter may be indulged in by those who have abundant resources. if not without loss, at all events without ruin. But its nature is to be extravagant, and those who so far as to stake all their all upon the venture, see in its true colors only when they are ruined. But so long as the discovery would enable them to guard against it, it is never found wanting. Let not this be the case with you, who are weak and hang on a single turn of the scale, nor be like the vulgar, who, abandoning such security as human means may still afford, when visible hope fails them in extremity, turn to the invisible, to prophecies and oracles, and other such inventions that delude men with hope of their destruction. Milesian, you may be sure that we are as well aware as you of the difficulty of contending against your power and fortune, unless the term be equal. But we trust that the gods may grant us fortune as good as yours, since we are just men fighting against unjust, and that what we want in power will be made up by the alliance of the Spartans, who are bound, if only for very shame, to come to the aid of their kindred. Our confidence, therefore, is all, after all, is not so utterly irrational. When you speak of the fate of their gods, you may as well fairly hope for that as yourselves. Neither our pretensions nor our conduct being in any way contrary to what men believe of the gods, or practice among themselves. As of the gods we believe, and of men we know, that by a necessary law of their nature they rule wherever they can. And it is not as if we were the first to make this law, or to act upon it when made. When made, we found it existing before us, and shall leave it to exist forever after us. All we do is to make use of it, knowing that you and everyone else, having the same power as we have, would do the same as we do. Thus, as far as the guards are concerned, we have no fear and no reason to fear that we shall be at a disadvantage. But when we come to your notion about the Spartans, which lead you to believe that shame will make them help you, we bless your simplicity, but do not envy your folly. The Spartans, when their own interest or their country's laws are in questions, are the worthiest of men alive. Of their conduct towards others, much might be said, but no clearer idea of it could be given than by shortly saving that of all the men we know, they are the most conspicuous in considering what is agreeable, honorable, and what is expedient, just. Such a way of thinking does not promise much for the safety which you now unreasonably count upon. In other words, they're saying the Spartans in other words, they deal with the honorable and the question of the expediently just. In other words, they they would be more careful about their choice. They look after their interest. They care about the honorableness, but at the same time, they're not going to look at something from something that has that where they have no direct interest on it. And the I think that's saying that they're not going to be going out hunting hunting for justice here, right? The Milesians, but it is for this very reason that we now trust to their respect for expedient to prevent them from betraying the Milesians, their colonists, and whereby losing the confidence of their friends in Helena and helping their enemies. Athenians, then you do not adopt the view that expediency goes with security, while justice and honor cannot be followed without danger. And the danger the Spartans generally court as little as possible. In other words, he's saying that there's too much danger here for the Spartans, and they would therefore they're not going to go risk it in that sense. But we believe that they would be more likely to face even danger for our sake, and with confidence than for others, as our nearest to the Peloponnesians makes it easier for them to act, as and our common blood ensures our fidelity. Yes, but what Yes, but what intending ally trusts to is not the goodwill of those who ask his aid, but a decided superiority of power for action. And the Spartan looks to this even more than others. At least such is their distrust of their home resources that it is only with numerous allies that they attack a neighbor. Now, it is likely that while we are masters of the sea, they will cross over to an island. In other words, saying that listen, they will act on something if when they have only on land, right? They'll attack their neighbor only when they have. In fact, that's the example of what happened in Argos, right? They went with their whole host. They went with overwhelming force and with their allies in that sense. And he's saying that they on land, okay, neighbor, yeah, but they have to cross the sea to do that. That's not going to be likely in that sense, right? And he goes, millions, but they would have others to send. The Cretan Sea is a wide one, and it is more difficult for those who command it than to intercept others, than for those who wish to elude them to do safety. And should the Spartans miscarry in this, they would fall upon your land, and upon those left on your of your allies whom Bradius did not reach. And instead of places which are not yours, you will have to fight for your own country and your own confederacy. Now the Athenians. Some diversion of the kind you speak of may one day experience, only to learn, as others have done, that the Athenians never once yet withdrew from a siege for fear of any. But we are struck by the fact that after saying you would consult for your safety of your country, in all of this discussion, you have mentioned nothing which men might trust in and think to be saved by. Their strongest argument depends on hope in the future, and your actual resources are too scanty as compared with those arrayed against you. For you to come out victorious. You will therefore show great blindness of judgment unless you, after allow us to retire, you can find some counsel more prudent than this. You will surely not be caught by the idea of disgrace in which dangers that are disgraceful and at the same time too plain to be mistaken prove so fatal to mankind, since in too many cases the very men that have their eyes perfectly open to what they are rushing into let let the thing called disgrace by mere influence of a seductive name lead them to the point at which they become so enslaved by the phrase as in fact to fall willfully in hopeless disaster into hopeless disaster and incur disgrace more disgraceful as the companion of error than when it comes as a result of misfortune. This is if you are if you are well advised, will you will guard against, and you will not think it dishonorable to submit to the greatest city in Helena, uh, when it makes you a moderate offer in becoming a tributary ally, without ceasing to enjoy the country that belongs to you, while nor when you have chosen to have the choice given to you between war and security, you will also be blind as to choose the worst. In other words, you will be chosen for security. You will be so blinded as to choose the worst. And it is certain that those who do not yield to their equals, who keep terms with their superiors, and are moderate towards their inferiors, are on the whole succeed best. Think over the matter, therefore, after our withdrawal, and reflect once again that is for that is for your country that you are consulting. Then you have not more than one, and that upon this one deliberation depends on its prosperity or ruin. The Athenians now withdrew from their conference, and the Milesians left themselves came to the decision concerning what they had maintained in discussion and answered, our resolution, Athenians, is the same as it was the first. We will not in a moment deprive of freedom a city that has been inhabited by these 700 years, but we put our trust in the fortune by which the gods have prevailed until now, and the help of men that is of the Spartans, so that we will try to save ourselves. Meanwhile, we invite you to allow us to be friends with you and foes to neither party, and retire from our country after making such a treaty as seem fit to us both. Such was the answer of Milesians. The Athenians, now departing from the conference, said, well, you alone, as it seems, judging from these resolutions, regard what is future as more certain than what is before your eyes, and what is out of sight in your eagerness as already come to pass. As you have staked most in the trust and trusted most in the Spartans, your fortune and your hopes, so will you be most completely deceived. The Athenian envoys now returned to their army. The Milesians showed no sign of yielding. The generals at once commenced the hostilities and built a wall around the Milesians, dividing the works among the different cities. Subsequently, the Athenians returned home with most of their army, leaving behind a certain number of their citizens and of allies to keep guard in land and sea. The forces thus left stayed and besieged the place. About the same time, the Argives invaded the territory of Plataea and lost 80 men, cut off in an ambush by the Plataeans and the Argive exiles. Meanwhile, the Athenians at Pelos took so much plunder from the Spartans that the latter, although they still refrained from breaking off the treaty and going to war with Athens, yet proclaimed that any of their people that chose to plunder the Athenians. Oh, no. Yet proclaimed that any of their people that chose to plunder from the Athenians. Okay, the Athenians also commenced hostilities with the Athenians for private quarrels of their own, but the rest of the Peloponnesians stayed quiet. Meanwhile, the Milesians attacked by night and took the part of the Athenian line near the market and killed some of those men, and brought in corn and all the rest that they could find useful for them. So returned and kept quiet, while the Athenians took measures to keep better guard in the future. The summer was over. Mm-hmm. And we'll stop here. The end of summer of the 16th year. Well, if you have any questions or comments, please put them below. If you saw that this is the famous million dialogue, right? The famous million dialogue. of this, where the Athens give their situation up to the islanders, and there's a dialogue here between the the Athenians and the Milians. Um, we finish up that summer of the 16th year. Um, if that's going to be there, we're going to see what happens next. Again, so put any questions you have, put it below. Uh, if you like it, share. If you want to share to a friend, tell a friend about the channel, what we're doing. Um, you can follow me. You can subscribe to get more of these things. You can follow me on social media of the sites below. And if you want to help the site, help me out with the continuation of this and doing this, um, please, I think I only have one subscribed stock person. So as of now, I understand that this is people that do this, and I'm kind of getting new to this, and probably people don't really care about this. Well, I hope they can change their mind, um, and we will continue with the winter next. So have a good day, and goodbye.